Hi.
I've got a good topic today. So, we're going to talk about the lasting effects of a toxic workplace. So I think we've talked about things surrounding this before in terms of what a toxic workplace might look like, that sort of thing. We just touched on it in other episodes because it tends to come up. But I think it's more around how that affects you in the long term. So once you've left that place and you've gone somewhere that is a decent employer and a nice place to work, the things that really stick with you, that I'm sure you have probably noticed in hiring people and training them and that sort of thing. So that's the topic.
Oof. How long have we got? I think my experience of that is quite detailed, I guess, in that we brought a lot of people into business. A lot of people have worked at agencies previously. I always have a conversation with people when they start to try and reassure them that toxic behaviours and bad workplace culture hangovers are a thing.
I think you referred to it as unfucking when I started.
Yep, that's the word that I was going to get onto that. So, yeah, we that's how I can best describe it, because it is that deep. I think the unfucking describes it to the level that it needs to be described.
Yep.
I've had that conversation recently with people, obviously, people that have joined the business. Sam, for example, I've had that same conversation with him, because there are things that are in play that become built in almost.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Which is what that refers to. And then you land at a place that, like Flaunt, that does things well. And it becomes alien. And then what tends to happen is people come in, I'll have that conversation with them, try and reassure them that this is how it needs to be done, not that way. But then what that does is that creates more pressure. So it's hard to manage for the first couple of months.
What do you mean, like more pressure in what way?
So because of the impact that, like, bad culture, bad process, too much pressure, all that kind of stuff has, even when it's communicated that that isn't in play, it still has a big impact. And then it almost has the reverse effect. So because the freedom and the support and the anything that you would need to become unfucked is in place, that almost sometimes has a reverse effect, in that the like deer in the headlights almost.
Too much
change.
Yeah.
Feeling like, and what I've seen happen is, like, taking on so much and wanting to do it all at once.
Oh, I do that. I mean, I still do that, but that's just me.
And I think that comes from the support, to be honest. It's like, I'd like to think that when people join Flaunt, they feel immediately supported, they feel welcomed, they feel like it's a nice environment and they're being treated kindly. And I think that, paired with, if they have come from, and not everybody comes from a toxic environment, but if they have come from that environment, they almost feel obligated, because they've been shown that kindness and that support, that they want to, like, get everything done immediately.
I think there's that, and then there's also, like, I would say, this is speaking from, like, me, you always come in and you're a little bit like, is this too good to be true? And actually, are you saying all that, but, like, you almost, like, don't believe it. So you're like, well, I'll just keep doing what I was doing, because, you know, this could all, like, fall apart quite quickly once. Because that's often what it is. Any business you start, it always looks rosy at the beginning, and then sometimes you get a little bit deeper and you're like, nope.
Yeah.
That one's all a bit of a lie, but here we are.
I'm always quite conscious of that, especially if I'm involved in the interview process, in it coming across as a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Just to get people through the door, and then it not actually being what you've sold.
Yeah. But I think there is that, like, hesitation from anybody who's come from a different environment into Flaunt. It's like, that's the bit that I think took me personally a really, really long time to get past. It's like, is this just all too good to be true? Or is it that, you know, we get all this stuff, but what do we have to give in return? Because I think I've always been given that in terms of not just like doing your job well, but like going over and beyond, because you get given a benefit, right? Well, that means you have to work late. Stuff like that.
Yeah, there's always a cost.
Yeah. And it was always made very clear that they're not just there because we appreciate having you in the business and we think you're good at your job. It was like they're there because that's a motivation for you to then go above and beyond for the business.
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses put things in place and develop a environment that is almost like a value exchange in their mind. They're like, right, we'll get you free fruit every week, but then we're going to ask for something to balance that scale. And
also, it can be taken away in like an instant.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is that if you're not doing this, or if I'm not happy even just 1 week, that stuff's going to go. Which is, I mean, that's absolutely crazy when you think about it.
If you've hit a point now where you've decided that it is real, what does that look like when you reflect back in terms of like versus previous experiences?
I can't believe I stayed at other places so long is one of those things that you're like, why did I think that was normal? And then, I don't know, I think it just actually makes you work harder more than anything, because you want to do it for, it's not even just doing it for like the people at the top, it's doing it for like the whole business. Because you appreciate how nice it is to have such a nice place to work, and you want to show that off. You want to do that to the best of your abilities and make sure that whole business thrives, not just you doing your job. Whereas I think in definitely more toxic workplaces, I keep using that word, I kind of hate it, but whatever. It's the only way to describe it sometimes, isn't it? It's very much each person for themselves. Which, and it's like that in everything you do, whether that's your job, you know, even doing things outside of work, it's all very just about you and how you're seen within the business. Whereas when it's done right, a business is about absolutely everybody and every single team, which is completely different to what I've seen elsewhere.
So when we set the business up, I'd been in and observed that in play, where people basically just climb on top of each other to get to the next step, and that's how they feel like they can progress within that business. And I think 10 years ago, before the rise of like conversations around mental health and responsible business and business for good and B Corp and all that kind of stuff, businesses of a certain type used that.
Yeah, definitely.
Like if they could create that environment where people were climbing over each other to get to the next step, they saw that as a good thing, because they felt like they were pushing people to fight, to progress and work harder, but totally on an individual basis and in silos, which then long term doesn't benefit the business. It's like you hit the nail on the head there. Appreciating a good environment and a good employer means that you actually genuinely want to push that business forward and do the best work that you can without being asked.
And also not out of like fear.
That's the ultimate aim, isn't it? I think we've had discussions on here in the past where there's little things and like North Stars for validating whether you've got it right from my perspective. One, people wanting to spend time with each other in and out of work probably more importantly, and then just the whole everybody feeling even and equal.
Yeah, definitely.
Without having to climb on top of each other.
I think the other thing is you don't realise how long it takes to like really get these things out of your system.
It
really
hangover.
does.
That's
it
how
really
I describe
is.
it.
Even little things like, say, going out for your lunch. I'm in places where like somebody is literally watching what time you left and what time you're coming back to the office.
Yeah.
And in my first like few months at Flawn, I was very much like, right, got to be back before my hour's up. Like literally like back like 10 minutes early just in case, so I made sure I didn't go over in any way. And then it's like, what? It takes a really long time to get that out of your head, though, to not be like, even out on your lunch, just for an hour, even if you just, walk around town or walk along the canal or whatever you're doing, not to be constantly checking what time it is because you're worried about having to get back, which then completely ruins the purpose of having a nice break.
Well, yeah, it's not a break, is it, if you're paranoid about
10 minutes.
Yeah. I think that comes down to trust, doesn't it? I mean, being able to, from a service standpoint, like, we're quite lucky in that me, Chris, and Jay all have service experience, like decades of service experience. So it's easy for us then to be comfortable with the work that's being delivered.
Because you know what level it should be at.
So when it comes to things like where people are spending the time, if the work's not getting delivered or the results aren't as they should be, or we can recognise that. Mm-hmm. And then perhaps if that was in play, that would make us then think, well, where is the time being spent? But because we have that experience, it's easy for us to afford people the trust and the flexibility.
I think that's the key word. And we do talk about this quite a lot in this podcast, but I think it's something that's really important, is the trust. Mm. And that goes both ways. That's not just you trusting the people who work for you. It's also you as an employee trusting the person that you work for, which is often it doesn't, in a lot of businesses, it doesn't go either way, let alone even one way.
I question how much that is even front of mind for people, though.
I mean, that should almost be like the first thing.
I would be interested across any sector how to understand at different scales of business like ours or massive, whether people even give it the time of day to think, do I actually trust these people? Mm.
Even just like your manager. Like,
do I trust them? Do you trust your line manager?
Yeah.
That's a good start,
yeah. Do I trust them? One time my back, have my best interests, help me out. All like they're really important questions. Like that, regardless of what the business is or what your job is.
Yeah.
That should almost be the first thing, because that's somebody you're putting an awful lot of faith in and spending a lot of time with. If you think of the amount of time that work takes up day to day, that's an awful lot of your life that you spend in, if you don't trust somebody, you almost constantly on edge, aren't you?
Well, yeah.
Which is not really a nice way to be.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's a funny one. I would be interested to see something like that, though. Some sort of data
around whether people think about trust.
Yeah, like whether people are just going through the motions or whether people actually take a step back and think, what's my opinion of this employer? Mm-hmm. That'd be quite telling.
It would, wouldn't it? I think one of the other big things, and this is one that I think takes a long time to get your head out of, is also that level of trust, like with like your clients, like how much you can tell them. So there's some workplaces where the level of transparency, again, a word we use quite a lot on this podcast, is, well, there isn't really one, but they try and keep everything under wraps and obviously just give the client exactly what they want. And obviously you don't tell clients absolutely everything, but there's a difference between not telling clients everything and manipulating clients, which I've seen. And if you're going to treat people outside of the business like that, what are you going to treat your colleagues like as well? Mm.
Yeah, I think that it's a ripple effect, isn't it? I think if you've got that internal toxicity, it passes on. It goes beyond the business. It goes beyond the business in terms of the people that you're dealing with, whether it be client, supplier. I think that's very much top down as well. Like, in our context, the respect that I have for clients and the gratitude that I have that clients stick with us should signal, and I think does signal, how we expect people to treat clients.
Yep. What do you think is the biggest cause of bad workplaces? Do you think it's money?
Ego. And I think there's a lot of things, isn't there? But I think from my experience, ego drives poor leadership and poor decision making, because essentially it's selfish and means that you're making decisions the wrong way round. Mm-hmm. You should be making decisions based on, in my opinion, team first, work, you.
Yep.
And I think that if you flip that on its head, and if you were to go into a place that had that in play and switch it, I think the impact of that would be pretty huge.
That would be such an interesting experiment.
There's a reality TV show there, isn't there?
There definitely is.
Going into a poor business and seeing if you can turn it around.
Yeah. But I guess, so a lot of the premise of what we've been talking about is like how these things, yes, they might happen in a business and that's great, you can move on and get away from it, but it's not just something that goes away overnight. It's something that takes like months, like sometimes years to actually get past that way of thinking and come out the other side and see a different way to work, a different way to behave in the workplace, a different way to treat people, and a different way to operate, essentially.
I think and not going back to what I said earlier about validating whether you've got it right or not, is if you've done it well and there becomes an occasion where someone comes into the business that doesn't sit within that culture, mm-hmm. the team feeling confident enough to call it out.
Yeah.
Which I've seen happen.
Call out bad behaviour.
And hold themselves to account for raising it because they know that the culture is important.
Yep.
And you're only as good as your worst performer.
Yep. And equally, the impact that one individual could have quite quickly on a team, if they're a bit of like a stronger individual, it's quite opinionated, that can actually be fairly catastrophic, can't it?
Yeah, you've got to try and balance people's personalities. But I think that, again, comes from the values of the business, interview processes. Mm-hmm. And I think quite quickly you can determine whether someone's going to be disruptive or not.
Yep.
And sometimes, depending on what that looks like, that drives innovation. So having people come into the business that perhaps do sit on the side of culture that isn't an exact fit.
Yep.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's just, again, going back to that validation point, if the team are comfortable enough, then communicating whether it's working or not. And the trust that that information that's being fed is true.
And honest.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Complex. It's like an onion.
Like an onion?
Yeah, layers.
One more question.
Mm.
And then I've got a load of this or that's for you.
Nice.
Do you think I mean, I know there is, but what's your opinion on this? The generational shift in how a workplace should be. Mm-hmm. And actually what people will put up with.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion on that?
There's a lot of opinion on that.
That's a whole topic in itself.
So, I think I gave the example like 10 years ago of the climbing on people's backs style of operating being a something that was almost encouraged and empowered by business. I think COVID accelerated the discussion around mental health, and it also called out bad business practice because the support that was then not given during COVID was something that was highlighted. And I think people have become a lot more comfortable having those conversations. And I think also social means
definitely
people calling people out. It's like instant.
Public.
They're done.
It's public,
so
and
everybody,
it could be in front of tens of thousands of people quite quickly.
So everybody's aware of that from a business perspective now. So I think it's a good thing that people's expectations are higher of what a business should deliver for them. I think that is a good movement. However, what I will say is that there's a generation of employees and candidates that are, through no fault of their own, less capable of dealing with stress, dealing with conflict, dealing with difficult situations. So there are certain conversations that happen where that group of people that are less capable and less equipped and don't have the tools sometimes stray into holding an employer accountable because they're not equipped to deal with issues, yet the employer will be acting responsibly. And that's the thing.
That's a thing that everybody will be having to try and navigate now, because
100%.
there's a big difference between like people of like say my parents' generation, where they're just like head down, just get on with it. That's it. That's life. You just get on with whatever happens, wherever you work. That's just life. You're not meant to enjoy work type attitude. And then there's like the younger generations that are coming in that are a bit more like, no, actually, like I want a career. I want to see what my path is. I want to, I want to be paid well. I want nice benefits. I want to work somewhere pleasant. There's that. And then there's what you've just pulled out, which is almost like, I kind of just think I expect to work somewhere like this, but then I'm not actually at the stage in life where I'm quite ready to take responsibility for having a decent job, working towards progression, moving my way up. But, even if that is guided, but giving back in the right ways.
I think that specific set of people that you're describing there, I think social has a lot of responsibility to take for that mindset.
No, I agree with that actually.
People are not only becoming more reliant on instant gratification, so going into a career, for example, their expectation is that they'll go in and they'll immediately be super high earner, expert in the field.
Told every day how amazing they are.
Yeah. When in reality, honing your craft should be a pursuit, not a expectation. And I think social has brought that generation through with that expectation and reinforced it by pretending that it's all rosy, loads of money can be made by doing TikToks, for example.
Influencers, yep.
And whilst that has its place, it lacks any sort of reality.
But it's dangerous actually, because you see these videos where they'll be like, right, if you go into, I don't know, digital marketing, for example, you could be earning this much every single day. You can work from home full time. You just need to go get this qualification, and you'll instantly step into a job that's worth this much. So people think that's true, whereas the people that are doing these videos actually might have been in that industry for 15 years.
Yeah, there is a lot of responsibility that I think is missing with influencers in that space when it comes to career advice.
And it's the same across pretty much every single sector, I think, is that. That you've got the high achievers that might have done really well or might have fallen into some company where it's way above average or whatever else.
It's education, though. I think whilst there is a responsibility with the influencers that are doing that, I think there's also a responsibility from businesses to communicate that you don't have to be an entrepreneur or the CEO of this or the CEO of that to be successful. You can be part of a business that values your input, and you can hone your craft and become amazing at something, and still that's super fucking valuable and super accomplished. So I think that message and that communication, which is why businesses zooming out and turning the camera around and letting people have an insight into what it actually looks like to be part of something like that, are the ones that are going to move it forward.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want some of this or that?
Yes.
Okay. I think I always know what you're going to say. Even when done after them, I know what you're going to say. Work from home or office?
Office.
Short form or long form video?
Long form first. Shorts off the back of the long.
What would you choose to watch? Would you scroll through a load of shorts, or would you sit down and watch one long video?
No, I rarely get the opportunity to consume content. Podcasting is probably the only medium that I really consume, because I can do it while I'm doing something else.
Yeah, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even if I'm watching TV, tend to have it on something, and I'll be doing something else at the same time.
Time poor, so I can listen to a podcast while I'm doing other things, which is where I consume most of it. I still value written content over video. I feel like TikTok, Instagram, all that kind of stuff has meant that there's that much video being created, because everybody's got a high definition camera in the pocket, that I feel like the craft and the effort that it takes to produce written word means that I value that medium a little bit more than the video.
Even with things like ChatGPT?
More so.
If it's well written.
Yeah, because I feel like the content that is well researched and is good stuff it's clear, it's quite evident.
Nice. Hang on, I've got another one before that one. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Do you ever drink tea?
Yeah, occasionally.
Okay.
The thing is, I switched pretty heavily around about the time that I started Flaunt, funnily enough.
To higher caffeine.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I love coffee. I feel like the more effort you put into making a cup of coffee, the better it tastes.
100%.
Like I got into pour over and like really going after beans and like paying attention to the tasting notes on the beans. And I know that sounds a bit like extreme.
Train barista.
Yeah. But I do appreciate it. Like if I feel like I've made an instant coffee, I won't enjoy it as much as...
I cannot drink an instant coffee.
Yeah, well, that's why we've got beans in the office. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with coffee. I love coffee. It's something I value.
I think anything that you put a bit more effort into, it's always better. Okay. You can interpret this on how you like. Subscription-based model or ad-supported model?
I think there's a place for both, but what I would say about an ad-based model is if you can build a way where the ads are personalised and they actually provide some value, then that is a better experience, I think.
It's one that's super intrusive that I think it ruins it.
Yeah. I think YouTube are in a weird place with that split, because they're pushing for premium, which gets rid of the ads. Yet their ad placement is like outrageously invasive, and sometimes
ruins a video.
Sometimes the targeting's just appalling as well. So I think it depends on the experience. Shall I tell you one subscription based model that I think is absolutely amazing?
Go on.
Substack.
What's Substack?
So it's like a blog, podcast, media
Should
place.
I know what this is?
Maybe. But they essentially have a load of experts, like really, really good experts that have content platforms, and it's subscription based, and they set a price and you basically pay, and then they deliver whatever they do.
Like, so you pay for an individual's almost. Oh, that's clever.
But it's really well done. If you want to check that out, it's like, you can never, there's a free version of it as well. You don't have to charge, but you can tell like they've done it in a way which means that the people that are putting content out on that platform are like really good.
Yeah,
it's not
they've
just
been like vetted.
Yeah, it's like curated really well.
Okay.
It's a bit like Medium, but I think the quality is better than Medium.
It's quite because I suppose it's kind of like having different journalists or writers, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then the difference of actually paying for an individual's content, you've got to
like,
really want it, haven't you?
It's like the value is there. So even though the people are charging, and people like there's some of the case studies that I've seen of people that are running like media offerings on Substack. They're making like 7 figures. It's good. But it's worth it. It's like it's a good value proposition.
I'm gonna look.
It's great.
I probably have. I bet I've come across something on this and probably read it, but not really.
You will have. You'll see as soon as you see the logo. You'll be like, oh
yeah. TV series or film?
That's blurry for me because the absolute surge of production quality across series is mental. The investment that's going into like TV series is just crazy.
Episodes are like mini films.
Yeah, it rivals films, doesn't it? And I think.
But what would you go for? Like Friday night, and you're like, right, kids are in bed.
I've got there.
Would you be like, start a new series or watch a film?
My issue with a film is I don't ever really find myself in the position that I've got 2-3 hours to sit down and dedicate to a film. So I find that I will lean towards a series if I'm going to sit down and watch something, so that I know that I can break off. But again, production quality. I just think Netflix have innovated that space, built a studio that is producing film quality series. Then that's made Amazon do it. Disney are now doing it. It's like films have got some hard work to do, I think.
I still do love a film.
It's a different experience, but
I definitely prefer a film in the cinema though.
So I think Netflix should buy Cineworld. I've discussed this.
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
I think it just makes absolute sense. Obviously, Cineworld are really struggling commercially to the point of administration, but if you think about the power of Netflix as a brand, the content that they've got, the capability of doing experiential.
Cinema, that'd be well good.
Well, you think about, let's take, what's the biggest one that Netflix has ever done? Stranger Things, something like that.
Yeah.
You think about rolling Stranger Things out, the cult following that it developed after season one.
Like a weekly showing, that'd be well good in a cinema.
Well, doing the Series 2 launch across the country, across every Cineworld, and making it an experiential thing. Merch sales, footfall, advertising opportunities on the networks. Then you've got the capability of doing episode launches, so getting people back through every week. It's like, it just makes perfect sense to me. I feel like I need to talk to Netflix about it, but I don't know how to do it.
Well, if they see this.
Yeah.
Are you watching anything at the moment?
Oh, what am I watching at the moment? Not really, no. What did I watch last? I've watched The Last Dance way too many times.
The Last Dance? I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, it's a documentary about the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan.
I'm going to watch that.
Oh,
I love a sports documentary, though.
Amazing.
Love a sports documentary. Love a sports film.
Life-changing. Absolutely life-changing.
I'll put it on my list.
Michael Jordan is just an anomaly.
Do you rewatch stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. If I've watched something I like it, I'll watch it like a week later.
I think I've probably watched it in total, start to finish, maybe 3 times.
Oh no, I'm talking like 30 times. I honestly...
There's 10 episodes though.
I recycle so many things.
I just think the learnings that you can take from it are just so deep if you actually take a step back and look at what's happening. Leadership, discipline, strategy. There's just so many facets to it.
I'm gonna check this out.
It's great.
I'll circle back.
Business, like endorsements, the stuff that Michael Jordan and then the rest of the team were managed to achieve were just crazy.
Okay. Campaign engagement metrics or direct sales attribution?
Both.
I mean, it depends, yeah, on the campaign.
You can't say that.
Oh, yeah. Dan's rule. Sorry, Dan.
Broke your own rule there. Yeah, it's different. But yeah, ideally both. I mean, if you're running a campaign and you're looking for engagement metrics, you then want to probably at some point have an impact on your bottom line or your whatever your metric is, your leads.
Mobile first or desktop first?
Mobile.
I think you've already answered this. Podcasts or audiobooks?
Podcasts?
Yeah.
Podcasts, yeah.
Okay. Cost cutting during economic downturns or maintaining investments for growth?
Circumstantial. Cost cutting out of necessity is acceptable. Having navigated a global pandemic whilst running a business, we overinvested. Probably in quite an extreme way.
Mm-hmm.
And touch wood, it positioned us really well coming out of that transition.
Yep.
So, yes, circumstantial, but what I'd probably say is being able to make an informed decision on what an investment through a difficult period looks like is the key.
Yep.
Like if you're in a time like the pandemic, economic headwinds, in the run up to that, if you've put yourself in a position to make a very informed decision, then that's how I would view it.
Last one. Halloween or Christmas?
Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas.
If you just said Halloween, I think I'd have been disappointed.
Yeah, Christmas.